wishing you all a very happy new year. First guest for 2021 is a tarot advisor, a witch, an author, and an activist, Courtney Weber. So, hello and welcome to In Conversation with Rashmi, and thank you so much, Courtney, for being a part of this conversation today.
Oh, it's great to speak with you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Courtney, to begin with, when did you know that witchcraft was what you wanted to do, and that's what you wanted to continue on with your life doing this? So, if you can tell me a little about that.
That's so funny because I ask myself that every day at 3 a.m. when I'm laying in bed. So, when I was little, I was always really fascinated with different religions, and I was very fascinated with the occult and with the paranormal. So, like most kids, I play with the Ouija board, but for most kids, that's a phase, and I just never grew out of it. But I grew up with a Christian background in a very secular area of the United States. Oregon is not certainly compared to the Midwest and the Southeast, and even in many cases the Northeast. You just don't have as many people who are as religious. A lot of my peers attended churches maybe on Christmas and Easter, right? But they really wouldn't show up for that aside from that. Whereas my mom's family is from the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, which there's a very strong Southern Baptist tradition there. My dad's family is from the Northeast, and they were, like, I guess I would say functionally Catholic. So they would say the Catholic prayers, they'd go to Mass, but I wouldn't say that they were as devout as some that were always praying the rosary or doing confession. They checked the minimal requirements to keep your Catholic card and didn't do anything beyond that. So I didn't grow up with the folklore of the saints as much, or as much work with Mary as, say, more people that practice like in more Italian cultures or in Hispanic cultures, Latin American cultures, where Catholicism is far more entrenched in the culture. But I was always really curious about what my Jewish friends were up to. And so I was constantly asking them questions about what's synagogue like? What are you going to do for Passover? What are you going to do for Hanukkah? I'm just curious. That was the only other religion that was exposed to me, and I'm sure probably annoyed them. They're like, I don't know, as kids are about their faith. Like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we do this, but I was curious. And then as I got older, go to Bible camp in the summer, I felt more connected with the idea of a divine when I was out in nature than I was when I was in our suburban church. And as I got older, I was pursuing a career in theater until I got to New York, and I decided I didn't want to pursue it. And I was trying to write, but was not really hitting a stride into what I wanted to write. And so I started hanging out in the performance art scene of New York City, just the really underground, the weirdest kind of stuff you're going to find. And sometimes people would get on stage at these open mics, and people would say, it's time for, they didn't know what they were going to perform. So they'd say, Q&A, ask me anything. Before the AMA on Reddit, there were the open mics in New York City where you get up and people say, ask me a question, Q&A. And I remember one day I started saying, I can talk about a bunch of different things. I can talk about sex, I can talk about music, and I can talk about witchcraft. What do you guys want to hear about? And the whole room went, witchcraft! And so people were asking me all these questions about it. And then soon after that, people started seeking me out. Like, I'm interested in this, but I want to know more. And what I realized in retrospect is New York was having a real renaissance when it comes to witchcraft. New York has a huge history of being a center of the occult world. Like the tarot deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck that most people are familiar with, was designed by a New Yorker, or maybe drawn by a New Yorker, Pamela Coleman Smith. And so there were some of the most famous magic shops were in New York City. And then, like with anything, witchcraft has times of popularity and times when it's not as cool anymore. Now it's definitely on an upswing, and it's the coolest it's probably ever been. But I came into it when it was really coming down off the craft wave of the 90s. It was the least cool thing you could be, is to be a witch. You know, and but I found that more people were interested in that, and that's what I started writing about. I'm like, okay, well, this is my vein then. I was struggling with fiction. I wasn't doing well in the, you know, the really sensational sex columns that were being published and just starting to be published on the internet. Nobody was interested in me talking about that, but they really wanted to hear about me talking about witchcraft and goddesses in particular. So I've written 3 books on goddesses, and I've written a book on tarot. I'm actually kind of going back to full circle now, and I'm doing a lot more fiction writing, but I feel like my fiction writing has been so strongly influenced by my experiences in witchcraft. And so that's been, you know, one of the things that witchcraft gave me is a real love of folklore, regional folklore and ancestral folklore, and just really soaking that up in the different magic. I'm back in Oregon now. I grew up out here, was in New York for 13 years and came back. So I'm enjoying a nice, well-rounded circle. And I now have a podcast with my 2 best friends, and we all kind of started witchcraft at the same time. And then the 3 of us went to 3 different places in the world. And then we came back together and have had 3 different journeys with witchcraft. And so here we are.
And you mentioned in your conversation just now that you also are a tarot advisor. So just so our listeners will understand, what is tarot?
Sure. So tarot is a deck of 78 cards. If you're familiar with the standard poker playing cards, you'll see a lot of similarities. The poker playing cards have 52 cards in them. And as I mentioned, the tarot has an additional suit of 22 cards that the recent events have ruined its title. They're called the Trump cards or the major arcana. So I'm like, damn it, so many things have been ruined. The major arcana, and that tells the story of a person's life. It goes from 0 to 22, and basically it indicates many of the archetypes that we see along the way. A lot of people relate it to just
person's future as well.
It can tell a person's future. They don't always tell a future, but sometimes they do. I find that they tend to, I'd say 80% of the time they affirm what a person already knows, but they need to see. They act as a mirror, okay? They need to see what they're doing is working, and they need to be, you know, given renewed confidence, or need to be reminded that it's not working. But then that 20% of the time, it comes out with some incredibly prophetic moments. I always tell this story as an example. Now, I was reading tarot in a burlesque club, again in New York City. There was a dancer I hadn't seen in a while. Her name was Deladare. She was just, actually, let's take that out, which I shouldn't include her name in this, so if you don't mind.
Sure.
So there was a wonderful burlesque dancer who was a friend of mine, and she came to my table, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. And I started doing a reading for her, and she asked basically, what's coming up for me? And I kept getting cards about the mother. There was a concern about the mother. All the cards were of worry or of the mother. And I kept saying, are you worried about your mom? And she said, no. And I said, are you worried about your future as potentially a mother? And she said, no. And I said, okay, let's shuffle again. Shuffle again, same thing. All mother cards, all worry cards. And I just kept saying, they keep saying you're worried about your mom. And she's like, no, I talked to her today. She's great. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'm just off today, you know, or maybe, you know, I wasn't sure. Well, about a week later, she heard from her mom. Her mom had been diagnosed with cancer. Now that diagnosis happened after the reading. So there was nothing in her mind. She hadn't said anything that might have made me think that, you know, because people ask me a lot of questions. Well, are you just putting into it what you want to see? Or did she say something that made you tap into that? And I said, literally, she said nothing about it because she didn't know about it. And her mother didn't even know about it, you know? You know, I'm very much a pragmatist. I'm a realist. There've been many times I think I would have moved over to atheism, but then sometimes you have these moments that just say there's something there that is, yeah. So that does tell you the answer to your question. They can tell the future. That's not their only purpose. And I also don't think it's their best purpose. It's not what I think that they do best for people. They don't improve people's, knowing the future doesn't always improve your life.
For sure, sure.
Yeah, but Yes, they can. There is something about them that connects with spirit.
Absolutely. And is there anything from, your cards and the witchcraft knowledge that you have that says 2021 could be a better year for all of us?
It's so funny how they say it, because the tarot will never, every single tarot card has a positive meaning, but also a challenging one. I liken it to some of the folklore about the blue jay. And so at least here in the United States, both in the Pacific Northwest, among some of the indigenous nations, as well as in the Southeast, where my family's from, the blue jay can be a friend. He can also be a foe. So in African American folklore, the blue jay is said to go to hell every Friday and tattle on the sins of humanity. So that makes blue jay sound like kind of a jerk if he's going and telling the devil, well, so-and-so was gambling. Well, so-and-so drank too much. Things that aren't the end of the world, maybe aren't the best thing for us, but they wouldn't be, not worth tattling on. But the blue jay also tattles on the devil and talks about slavery. So he starts reporting on things we need to pay attention to. Okay, so then you have to ask yourself, is the blue jay an ally or is the blue jay an enemy? We don't really know, so I think that's where what the tarot is saying about like the future when it comes to 2021. It has shown that, like last year, my husband and I did our reading for 2020. It was showing that the main spirit was the spirit of cooperation, and that was the big theme. Well, we took that as, what a great year this is going to be. We're all going to be working well together. And the truth is that the cooperation came in the form of how we address the pandemic, wearing the masks, only buying one thing of toilet paper at the grocery store, social distancing.
Yeah,
that's all cooperation. So the tarot was right. But cooperation always sounds like, oh, that's going to be the best of things. Well, it's a tough skill to learn under some circumstances. So, what we have seen is that 2021 is going to bring out the best in people and the worst in people. Perhaps even more than we've seen already.
In one of the notes that you had written, it says, I believe magic is present in all existence. It's not something we must seek to find outside of ourselves, but rather unlock from within. So can you throw some light on that?
Well, I think that the idea of magic comes back to some very ancient and very practical roots. We're not if we look at our bodies, your, my bodies, we're not well equipped for this planet. We don't have fur. We don't have scales. Compared to other animals, we don't run very fast. We don't see very well. We don't hear very well. All we have is we have intellect and we have thumbs. But aside from that, before we built enough technology with our thumbs and our minds to really protect ourselves, I believe that there was a sixth sense that just helped us know when danger was coming. That just like we might be out gathering herbs and suddenly it's like, something tells me I need to gather more of this herb to take home. And you take it back to the cave and it turns out that the elder, the one who knows how to birth babies, is very, very sick from something. And that's the herb that's going to cure it. We just knew. Those are the kinds of things that has happened to us. And I think when that spirit is tapped into, just recently, actually just yesterday, I found out that a friend of mine had passed away. 2 nights ago, in my dream, I had a visit from someone who had passed away who told me someone like him was going to die. And which was a young man, about 40, and who was going to die suddenly. And that's exactly what happened. And they were even more alike than I realized. They both were guys I went to school with, that were in my past, and that were theater people. So that there were some very clear signs. What I think that is like my ancient cave woman self getting a sense from, the community that there's some danger coming. So right, and that's how it manifests.
How do you react when something like that happens? Like, you get this intuition and then it happens 2 days later. How do you react to something like that? What does that make you feel?
Well, at this point, I'm used to it. When I was younger, it was scary and also exhilarating, because it's like, I don't need to fear death. Death is there literally is existence after that. If I have a friend coming to me and giving me this information, then that was exciting to me, right? But it was also frustrating when I was younger, because I didn't know how to follow it. It's taken me a very long time to understand signs from spirit. I mean, I feel like witches have different gifts, and one of my gifts is called dreaming true, or having honestly prophecy of death, which I think tends to come more out of my Appalachian family, because that's a gift that a lot of people talk about in Appalachia, knowing when a person's time was coming, knowing when, when I was, I mean, this may sound silly to some, but maybe not to everyone. My cat died a few years ago.
Okay.
And the night before she died suddenly. I wasn't aware that she was sick, because animals often hide their illness. And so I was not aware that she was not terribly old. But I had a dream about another friend of mine who had died. And he was the friend who had helped me rescue her.
Oh, wow.
So he had helped me care for this cat, and he loved her so much. And when I moved away, I think he missed her more than he missed me. And I had a dream about him, and he told me something in the dream. And for the life of me, I'll never remember what he said, but I woke up enraged at him. Whatever he had said made me so angry. And I'm like, this dream doesn't make any sense. Why would I dream something about, and I try to analyze it, like, what does he represent in me that I'm angry at? But like, I don't remember what he said. Well, that night when my husband and I are at the emergency vet, and our cat is struggling, and the vet's giving us the options, the dream came back to me, and my whole body went cold. And when we went out to talk about it, I said to my husband, I had dreamt about Dawn last night, and I think he was coming to tell me that Lily's time is here. I don't think we need to put her through any more treatments. He was dressed all in black in my dream as well, which is something he was very intentional about. When he would wear Black, was definitely like he would mourn out loud no matter what it was. So I learned that when I dream of a dead person, I pay a lot of attention to how they're dressed and how they behave, because it will give me some information that I may lose someone else.
And you also talk to the dead, right?
I do. I have, I have ancestor altars, and have done rituals and made arrangements where, that we have a certain time that we talk to one another. I'm careful talking to other people's dead, because that just gets into, it's like letting strangers in your house. Most people are fine, but every once in a while you get someone who doesn't have good intentions, or who isn't well and may do something that is not as untoward. The dead are no different than we are, but they're very, you just have to be careful. Just like you wouldn't necessarily let anyone off the street into your house. And if you did, it'd probably be okay, but it might not be. So you generally just talk to them on the porch,
Well, you move with caution then, right?
You move with caution. Same with you do with people, right?
I want to ask is also, with science and technology these days, and the inventions and everything that comes out, reality versus mythical stuff. So how do you balance the two separate worlds that people believe or don't believe in?
I don't believe that they're separate. I think science, technology, and magic work together and always have. I caution people not to abandon science and magic, and lean on magic instead. Very recently, I got an email from someone who has experienced an awful lot of trauma, and is going and admitted that they're at a very poor place mentally, like mental health wise. And they said they've been going to therapy. They also wanted to see if they'd been cursed. Well, I responded saying, we're not going to talk about cursing. We're not going to look at cursing. I want you to stay with your therapy. If you don't like this therapist, find another one. This is what you need to work on first. I just don't want people to, I feel like magic and spirit has led us to technology and wants us to use it. At the same time, I believe that I have seen magic help with science, a help with a person's healing. You know, I've heard of stories that, you know, people that pray in the NICU unit, the babies all do better the next day.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have them in the NICU. They should definitely stay there. But maybe some prayer isn't a bad thing. You know, maybe it can help change the energy in there. You know, I was talking with you about my cat being at the vet, and it was very sweet. I dropped her off to have the surgery. The vet tech said that she had put a calming spray in her kennel to help her be calm. Well, there's some magic in that as well. There's the intention for being calm, and she should have anesthesia, and she should have antibiotics. But there's nothing wrong with adding magic to the work that's already being done, as long as the magic is supportive of that. It's just like, I don't believe that faith healing is the way to go. I don't think that that's what our ancestors have worked so hard for us to have, these technological advancements, for us to abandon them in lieu of the things that was all they had, you know, and that are just not, it's just not feasible. You know, I don't believe that spirits, in general, I don't believe that spirits or God or whatever you cause the pain and suffering that we experience. I think that's just part of being alive. But I do believe the spirits and God, or however you envision divine to be, can help us navigate it, and they want to help us. Another example of a way that I feel like magic and technology and science work together is I got an email from a woman who attended one of my healing rituals, where one of the priestesses we blessed the water, and she, you know, she had placed her hands on the woman's head. She just felt called to do that. And the woman thought, well, that's kind of cool. I have had these migraines, and she seemed to know. How interesting is that? Well, a few days later, her doctor called her and said, you know, I just decided to take a look at your last MRI one more time, and I see something now I didn't see before. So to me, I feel like spirit whispered in that doctor's ear and said, just take one more look. And so the doctor went and took a look and said, I see what I didn't see before. Let's try this. And so in a way, that's how I feel like magic and science and technology work well together. The spirits are like, use your technology. Here's another way you can use it. So I'll say it as many times as I possibly can out there to your listeners. Do not abandon your medicine in lieu of, you know, magic. Like, don't do it. But your magic may be able to help you navigate the medical system. It might keep you calmer. It also might keep you more attuned to what's going on with your body. You know, I know of another woman, she had a vision of somebody like cutting into her heart when she was doing some magic, and she's like, oh, something happened. And then later she found out she had like a heart arrhythmia. So it was like the spirits were telling her, pay attention to your heart, but they weren't trying to injure or fix it for her. So.
Yeah. And you've also gone ahead and written books, 3 different books. Can you tell me a little about that, and where people can find them, or if they want to buy a copy of it, where can they get that?
Absolutely. So my first 3 books are, I'll go ahead and pull them all out so that you can all know. So the first goddess book is Brigid, History, Mystery, Magic of the Celtic Goddess. This is actually a really good time of year to read this one, as her season is called Imbolc, which is at the beginning of February. So it's a great time to read this one if you want to try to. Imbolc was a holiday that was celebrated, or basically a time of the year that was honored by the different Celtic peoples of Western Europe as the midpoint between the beginning of winter and the beginning of spring. So it was a time when life was starting to come back into the world, and it was like, it's like, okay, great, we've made it. We can make it to springtime. We can make it to fresh food. So it's a really important time. So that's a great one. Another goddess book I've written is called The Morrigan, Celtic Goddess of Magic and Might. Morrigan is an Irish goddess. She has a lot of different attributes and tends to be rather complex and nuanced. So some of the things that she is known for include warfare and prophecy, sometimes healing in a very strange way, and you know, kind of related to death omens. She's not like a grim reaper who causes death, but she is one who can warn somebody about a death that's coming. So and she's very, very popular right now, a lot of because of her warfaring aspect. A lot of people feel drawn to her. So that's my other one. And then I have a book called Tarot for One, The Art of Reading for Yourself. So if people are interested in learning how to read tarot cards for either themselves or someone else, but definitely reading for yourself is fine. And it does break down like what the story of the tarot and how to find meaning within the different 78 cards. My fourth book isn't out yet. It's on the goddess Hekate, who was a Mediterranean goddess of ghosts and the crossroads and healing and also prophecy. So all of my books are available in most bookstores. I would really encourage people to get them from your independent booksellers if you can, your small stores. If you just don't have anybody near you, then you can get them on Amazon, or you can order them through me on my website, which is CourtneyAWeber.com. But let's all try to support our independent bookstores whenever possible.
That's great. Thank you so much, Courtney. And
likewise, thank you so much.